Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we have an all new beauty battle. So I realized it has been 6 months since my last beauty battle video and I can't believe it's been that long. I like to do these videos every so often because I do review a ton of new makeup and some of these releases have some very similar qualities, characteristics, so I might give them all good reviews, but the average person is not buying every single release the way that I am. So I do like to come back and kind of share which one, if I had to choose between the two, which one I personally prefer and which one I would recommend over the other. So these videos are very, very challenging for me, but they are a lot of fun. So let's start with two mascaras. So the first one is my absolute holy grail YSL Lash Clash mascara. So this is the one I have on today. I love this one so much. This just gives the right amount of length and volume and thickness, and I just love how it separates my lashes beautifully. It's never too clumpy. The packaging on this is beautiful. It does have a really large wand, but it just works so well. I have always been someone who insists that you don't need to spend a lot on a mascara, and I do agree with that. It's just this one has me in such a chokehold. I love it so much. But recently, Charlotte Tilbury came out with the new Exaggerize Volume Mascara. Now, while I love the YSL packaging, it's pretty obvious that Charlotte Tilbury's packaging is quite a bit more special. This one is just a plastic tube. This one is actually a glass bottle. It's very beautiful. I love the way it's shaped. The shape of the wand is actually really nice. It is one of these more curved applicators. They both have fiber bristle wands, which is also my preference. And the Charlotte Tilbury definitely gives a lot of thickness at the base. I wouldn't say it's quite as lengthening as the YSL, but it definitely does give some thickness. I do think this looks really beautiful on the lashes. I did do a dedicated review of this one as well, and I feel like in that video it kind of seemed like I didn't like this, and that's not the case. I do like this. I like this quite a bit. These are both very expensive mascaras. I think they retail for around the same price point. And if a mascara is going to be $30 or $40, I am going to be a little bit picky. I love the Lash Clash, like I said, for how it looks on my lashes. I love it so much. My lashes look so long, but also separated, but also thick. I just always love how my lashes look with this one. This one can get a little bit clumpy if you're not careful. It will make your lashes look so thick at the base, and you definitely look like you have very full, thick lashes. It does give a little bit of length, but it's not the most lengthening, especially compared to the YSL. Neither of these mascaras flake throughout the day. They both wear all day long. Neither one of them flake or smudge. So they're both fantastic in that regard. I will say at the very end of the day, the Charlotte Tilbury does still somehow look fresh. Like I just put it on. The YSL does kind of wear down a little bit more than the Charlotte Tilbury. When taking them off at the end of the night, this one is an absolute mess, whereas this one is not. This one comes off pretty easily. This one, there's just mascara all over the eye area. So that's just something to keep in mind. I do like this quite a bit, but I do like the YSL better just for the way it makes my lashes look, what it does for my lashes. I like how it wears throughout the day. I like how it removes. It's just a really solid, excellent formula. This one I really like. I don't like that it does have the potential to get clumpy, and I don't like that it's an absolute disaster to take off at the end of the night. I like both, but my YSL definitely still wins. Charlotte Tilbury has a lot of points for packaging and how it still looks fresh at the end of the day, but the YSL just still wins out. I cannot get over how much I love my lashes when I'm wearing this mascara. It just doesn't do anything I don't want it to do, and it's not a mess to take off. This is still just my absolute holy grail best mascara. This is really great, but it's not this. So I do still prefer the YSL. Okay, I have a couple of foundations I want to put head to head. So first, I think I'm going to start with stick foundations because I did try a few stick foundations. I did try out the LYS No Limits foundation stick, and I also tried out the Dior Forever Skin Perfect face stick. I have this one in 0N, I have the LYS in LP4. The Dior is too light, the LYS is too deep. My true shade is somewhere in the middle. These are obviously very, very different price points. LYS is definitely on the more affordable end at Sephora, whereas Dior we know is a luxury brand and very, very pricey. Now, that price point is definitely reflected in the packaging. The LYS is definitely plastic. I feel like the lid spins a little bit, so I don't think it's the most expensive packaging. But when you take this off, you just twist it up. It is in this triangular shape, which is cute. The shade itself, like I mentioned, is a little bit too deep, but I can make it work. So I really, really do like this for how comfortable and hydrating it is. I think this gives a phenomenal level of coverage. This wears all day long and it looks beautiful. And like I said, it does give a really nice medium coverage while also being hydrating. There's also no fragrance to it, and I obviously really enjoy the price point of this one. Now moving over to the Dior side, the packaging on this one is just, it's unmatched. It is such a beautiful component. Opening it up, it looks really, really lovely. It does have a fragrance, but to me, it just smells very, very clean and fresh. And I love it. I absolutely love the fragrance on this. I really do. In terms of texture, this is very similar to the LYS. Definitely very creamy, very comfortable, very blendable, just very easy to work with, and looks and wears great on my dry skin. These are both phenomenal for dry skin, I will say that. What it kind of comes down to between these two, and I noticed this after using this for a while, is that the Dior, you really want to work in thin layers. So you can get a solid medium coverage with the Dior, but I do think it's on the lighter side of medium. I think that you can get a solid medium, but if you do build this up too much, it will just move all over the face. Whereas this, you can apply, get a nice medium coverage, and it's not going to move around. While I do absolutely love this, I do prefer the LYS because I can get more coverage out of it and it's not going to slip and slide and move everywhere. Another foundation. One of these hasn't even made it into a month-end speed reviews yet, but we have the Huda Beauty Easy Blur Foundation against the One Size Turn Up the Base Full Beat Liquid Foundation. So I tried these both recently, and like I mentioned, I am a dry skin type. In the past, matte foundations have not worked for me. They have not felt comfortable. They have not looked nice. But I feel like these two have single-handedly led the revolution into matte foundations that are going to give you excellent coverage without making you look cakey, without taking any sort of moisture out of the skin, and just feeling ridiculously heavy all day. These two are amazing for dry skin. These are, of course, going to be great for oilier skin types, normal skin types, but dry skin with full coverage foundations, there was a time when that was absolutely unheard of. These are so good, both of them. So the Huda, this is the Easy Blur Natural Airbrush Foundation. This is in the shade Vanilla 120B. This is also made in Italy, has an 18-month shelf life. This is the one I'm wearing today. And I love how my skin looks. I will say the shade is almost a little bit too light, but I can make it work once I add on some other products. I love how my skin looks today. This one gives a little bit more of a medium coverage, but you still get a really solid coverage level. It's so lightweight. It does not feel like I have makeup on my face. It's just so comfortable. Another thing I love about this, it says it dries down to a natural skin-like finish. I do feel like it's a more matte finish, but it's not a heavy, uncomfortable matte. I can see my skin texture, but not overly so. And it's just, like I said, it is so comfortable, but it does not feel like it's drying me out, and it doesn't feel like I have anything on my face. But it has definitely given me a really great coverage level. I'm just so impressed by this foundation, and I love how smooth and even my skin looks today just wearing this. I also love that I don't have to set this because this really does dry down beautifully. Now, one thing I mentioned recently is with this foundation, it's very interesting because when you put it on, I don't find it looks nice right away. I find that I have to put it on, blend it out, and wait a minute or two, and it feels like it just sinks into my skin and looks fabulous. But when I initially put it on, I'm thinking, this looks so dry. This is not going to look good. This is not going to come together. And I have that split second of, should I just take this off? Before I look in the mirror again, and it just looks amazing. So that is something that's important to mention, especially if you're a dry skin type like me and you end up picking this up and putting it on and you're instantly thinking, what have I done? What is this? Just wait a minute, because this will get so, so good. The One Size Foundation. So with this one, you get the same amount of product. This one only has a 12-month shelf life and it's made in the US. This one also comes in a frosted glass bottle. It has a really beautiful red chrome cap to it. The packaging I think is stunning. This does say to shake well, and you do need to be sure to shake well, because if you don't, it is so thick that it actually won't come out of the pump. Of course, once you shake it, it will. So you do get a really nice quality pump here as well. And this one definitely gives a little bit more coverage even than the Huda. I do love the full coverage I get from this. And again, to have a full coverage matte foundation on my dry skin that is also very comfortable is just, previously unheard of. This is also very comfortable. It feels lightweight. It doesn't feel like I have makeup on my face. I do need to set this with powder though, because even though it is a matte foundation, for some reason it looks almost a little glowy when I first apply it, and I do feel like my hair kind of sticks to my face a little bit. So I do have to be careful to set this, which I don't necessarily love. One of the things I love about the Huda is that I don't have to set it. I have dry skin. I don't normally have to set my skin. For the last few years, I've been using a ton of powder because the trends have all been toward these more glowier foundations. Part of what I love about the idea of a matte foundation is I just like how it looks on my skin, but I like that I don't have to use as much powder. And now that they've ruined my Givenchy powder, now I'm even less interested in setting my face. So I'm interested in using as little powder as possible. That being said, these both wear all day long. They both look beautiful on my skin. They both feel very lightweight. This one looks good initially, whereas like I said, this one you have to wait a minute. This one will give you a little bit more coverage as well, but I have to set this. This one I don't. Obviously, if you're someone who travels a lot, the Huda Beauty is going to be your option. It's definitely a lot more lightweight and it's going to be a lot easier to carry. This one's very heavy. I do not recommend traveling with it. I absolutely love both of these so, so, so much. This is really hard, but I do think I have to go with Huda for this one. I like the more lightweight squeeze tube bottle. I love a good glass bottle, but there's something to be said about this really nice lightweight bottle. And again, I love how it looks on my skin today. It's just so comfortable and easy to wear. I didn't need to powder my whole face. I just needed to powder my under eyes. And I added the rest on and called it a day. I love how it looks. I don't necessarily know that it's blurring, but I just do love the way it makes my skin look in general. I love that it's matte, but it just gives me a solid medium coverage and doesn't feel like anything on the skin. This one doesn't either. This one is also fantastic, but I think if you made me choose between the two, I would have to choose the Huda. Now, I will have my rankings at the end of the year of all the foundations I tried, all the concealers I tried, but like I said, some of these have some very similar properties. So my absolute favorite concealer of all time is easily the Natasha Denona. But within the past couple of months, I did also try two concealers that are absolutely fantastic for a lighter coverage day. First, we have the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Lift and Flex Concealer. I have mine in the shade 1. On the other side, we have the MAC Studio Radiance 24-Hour Luminous Lift Concealer. So the Danessa Myricks, you get 9.4 ml of product. The MAC, you get 11. First of all, I do want to say I absolutely love the way that MAC is kind of redoing some of their packaging, definitely making things a little more modern and fun. And the Danessa Myricks is so cute and tiny. I love these. These are both fantastic concealers. These are definitely going to give you a more medium coverage. They're definitely very lightweight. They can give you a more light coverage, but you can build them up to get a nice medium. They're both very, very comfortable. In the MAC, I do have the shade NW10, in case I forgot to mention that. So the Danessa Myricks has this cute little doe foot applicator, and you can see it's almost like it has a little scoop on it. So it does kind of hug the under eye, but because it does have this little scoop, it kind of makes it so that you can't get too much product at once, which is really nice. And it just feels so nice and hydrating under the eyes. I do recommend putting a dot of this on your under eye and letting it sit for a minute before blending it out, just to get the most amount of coverage from it. But it's so comfortable, wears all day long, blends out like an absolute dream. And I always feel the need to add this caveat, but there is no truly crease-proof concealer because if you have lines, product will settle no matter what. But there are concealers that are definitely a little less obvious about that. There are some concealers that just every single ounce of product goes straight to that crease. And then there are some that are just really not very obvious about that creasing. And this is one of them. This is fantastic. I love this. This is, like I said, just very lightweight, very comfortable. Over on the MAC side, very, very similar properties. So this does have a different shaped doe foot. In terms of packaging, I would say I like the MAC a little bit more. I just think it looks a little bit more luxurious. On the MAC side, you do get this larger, more rounded doe foot, but I do kind of like it. Something about this one also makes it so that you don't get too much product out at once. I will say this one definitely has a much wider opening to it, so I do think it gets a little bit messier. This one also wears all day, looks beautiful on the under eyes, so comfortable, and somehow creases even less than the Danessa Myricks. And I would also say the MAC gives me a tiny bit more coverage. They both also have a soft sort of radiant finish. So again, these are very, very, very similar products. This is also the one that I chose to take with me on vacation, and I wore it every single day and it did not let me down one time. So I absolutely love both of these. It's honestly very, very hard to choose between the two. I think if anything, I have to give it to the MAC just because it does give me a bit more coverage, and I think if you compare the very minimal amount of creasing that comes from either one of them, I would say the MAC creases a tiny bit less. Next, I have two high-end bronzers that came out this year, and I've been loving both of them. So on one side, we have the Lancome Skin Transforming Bronzer in the shade One Fair. And on the other side, we have the YSL All Hours Hyper Bronze, also in the shade One. These both have a 24-month shelf life. I will say the YSL is about $20 more. This packaging is so beautiful. I go nuts for a good tortoiseshell packaging. I don't know what it is. It just, to me, it reminds me of the 90s, I would say, but it also just makes me think luxury. So this bronzer has 10 grams of product, which is quite nice. You do get a flower embossment in here as well. You can see mine is pretty worn down because I have used it so much. I have used this bronzer constantly. I also ended up taking this one with me on vacation, and I just used it constantly. I also used it today because it's just so, so good. This one is easily one of the very, very best bronzers. If you have fair skin, the shade One Fair is so perfect. It's not too warm. It's not too cool. It just has that exact right undertone, the exact right amount of pigment. It can be very, very sheer, but you can also build it up. And like I said, it gives you just the right amount of pigment, especially if you're fair like me, but they also do have a really decent shade range. This is also made in Italy and has a 24-month shelf life. And I do like that it seems nice and thin. It kind of looks like you don't get a ton of product, especially when you compare it to the YSL, which is made in France and also has a 24-month shelf life. However, like I said, the Lancome has 10 grams of product. The YSL only has 7.5. So this one looks like you get significantly more in the YSL, but you don't. This packaging is also very, very luxurious. I have loved the packaging of this. So on the inside, this is what the bronzer looks like. You do get the really beautiful YSL logo in there as well. And this one is another one that just blends out. It is so velvety and so smooth, and also much like the Lancome, just looks airbrushed on the skin. This one is another one that is absolutely incredible for fair skin. This is, like I said, in the shade One. I believe this one made it in my best bronzers for fair skin video. If you didn't catch that, this is also absolutely incredible for that. I love this one. Like I said, the packaging, the blendability, the tone of the bronzer on the skin. Everything about this is just absolutely perfect. I love this one so much, and this is the one I was reaching for exclusively until I got the Lancome. So actually holding them side by side, the YSL is a teeny tiny bit warmer than the Lancome, and I was also surprised to see that the Lancome actually does have more product. They both have the most stunning packaging imaginable, and these are definitely my most used bronzers of the year. But if I had to recommend one, I don't think either one of them are fragranced, at least not that I can detect. But like I said, the YSL is about $20 more. Both have beautiful packaging. The YSL is definitely a little bit more luxurious, but the Lancome is so beautiful. If I absolutely have to choose between the two, I would go with the Lancome. If you're somebody who travels, the Lancome is going to be definitely more lightweight. The Lancome has a much better shade range. It's $20 less and you get more product, but you're still getting a luxury product. So if I had to choose between the two, I'm keeping both and loving both, but if I absolutely had to choose, I would give it to the Lancome. Next, we have two face palettes that I have absolutely raved about. So the first one is from NARS, and this is the Pure Luxury Light Reflecting Cheek and Eye Palette. This is their holiday launch for this year. The packaging on this is beautiful. Inside, you get 3 blushes, a highlight, and a bronzer. There is one for light to medium skin tones and one for medium to deep skin tones. This one I love. These are the Baked Gelée formula from NARS, which is their best when it comes to their face products. This blush here is very, very glowy. These two are definitely more matte, but they're just so incredibly beautiful on the skin. These powders do go on a little bit more sheer, but are absolutely buildable so that you can get as much pigment as you want. The bronzer looks gorgeous on my skin. Looking at it, I thought for sure it was going to be way too deep, but it actually works beautifully. And the highlighter, though it looks very intense, it's actually a little bit more subtle, but it also looks beautiful on the skin. This also has an 18-month shelf life and is made in Italy. On the other side, we have one of the most anticipated holiday launches of the year, and this is from Hourglass, and this is the Ambient Lighting Edit Unlocked. I have mine in the Dragon palette because this is definitely the one that is most suited to my fair skin. These are obviously very, very pricey. This does have a 12-month shelf life and is made in Italy as well. I absolutely love these ambient lighting powders. These are just so beautiful on the skin. They look airbrushed. They're very lightweight. They're a little bit more on the sheer side, but can be built up to whatever you want them to be. And I love this particularly this year because essentially all 6 of these shades were new shades. Only 5 of them were supposed to be new, but there was a bit of a cross between another Hourglass palette that came out. These blushes I love. This mauve tone I love. It's a mauve blush, and previously my most used mauve blush from Hourglass has always been Mood Exposure because I think that's beautiful, and it definitely is. But I love this because it's just a little bit softer. And as someone with fair skin, I do appreciate when products come off just a little bit softer because it makes it a little bit more foolproof for me. This blush up here is more of a peach, which I think is gorgeous. It does have a slight sheen to it. What I most love about the bronzer this year is that this bronzer is definitely more neutral, almost cool leaning, whereas the past couple years they've had a more warm bronzer. I don't love an overly warm bronzer. Like I said, I do have very fair skin and I do have a cooler undertone as well. So for me, bronzers that are too warm are just going to look orange so fast. So I do prefer something that is a little bit cooler in tone. So I absolutely love this bronzer. I think it's fantastic. The 2 finishing powders in here are beautiful as well. The highlighter is more of a golden, and while that's not typically my preference, I still think it's beautiful and it definitely still works on me. These are definitely very different palettes, definitely very different formulas, but both of them are anticipated holiday launches every single year. I love both of these. I think they're both fantastic palettes. And like I said, it does depend on what you personally are looking for. The NARS is definitely less pricey, but if I absolutely had to choose, I would say I would go with the Hourglass because of the finishing powders. I don't necessarily think I need 2 finishing powders, but at the same time, the addition of those powders really makes it a full, well-rounded face palette for me. So for that reason, I would go with the Hourglass. I just find that I can get every single thing done that I need to with this palette. You can with this one too, but I like that I have the powders in here too. So I just think it makes it a little more well-rounded. And finally, this is one that I wouldn't normally include, but I did get a question on a video which one I would prefer if I had to choose. So I thought I would include it. I have the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette versus the Natasha Denona I Need a Warm. The I Need a Nude palette is one of my absolute favorite eyeshadow palettes of all time. This is definitely a lighter palette. You only get this one shade that really gives us a ton of depth. You do get a lot of shimmers in here. You get quite a few of her standard metallics. You get some of these sparkling wet effect formulas. You get one sparkling foiled, which is my favorite. And then you get a lot of really beautiful mattes. And like I said, these are definitely all on the lighter side, but this is essentially my most perfect eyeshadow palette. I love this so much. My go-to look on vacation was Mesh and Stone with Whisper as my lid shimmer, and I think that's what I wore every single day when I was on holidays. And I loved how it turned out. I loved how it looked. My go-to look recently is the one I'm wearing today, and this one was inspired by her release of the Baby I Need a Nude, because I've been using Mesh and Vague with Muse, just patted all over the lid in the middle. So just a very simple go-to everyday kind of look, and I think it looks so pretty. This year she did come out with the I Need a Warm palette. Now these palettes are the exact same price. They are made in the exact same place. With this one, obviously we're leaning definitely more warm. And you definitely get a lot of shimmers, and you get some of these more impactful shimmers. We do have a duochrome up here. We have more of these sparkling foiled and less of the sparkling wet effect. She did throw in some nude formulas as well. We have her new sort of metal gloss formula, which kind of reminds me of the sparkling foiled formula. And then we also have the slip cream, which I think is an updated cream to powder formula. And I think she did a fantastic job with that update, because I feel like that formula sort of got rid of anything that was actually wrong with the original cream to powder. It's not patchy, it's very blendable, it's very easy to work with, and you can definitely get a lot more depth out of this palette than the I Need a Nude. And I have definitely been leaning into warm tones this year as well. And I think that's just a result of my hair being darker and warmer as well. So I have been leaning into these warm tones. However, I like that this palette is warm without being too warm. It's warm without being orange. And I appreciate that so much. It just has just the right amount of warmth to it. If I had to choose only one of these, I personally would go with the I Need a Nude. I just love it more. I love the neutral, cool leaning tones. I love the nude looks that I get from it. I just think it's so perfect, and it's everything I want in an eyeshadow palette. I think if you want a lot of depth, then I would definitely go with the warm palette. I think that's definitely the better option. And obviously, if you love warm tones, if you want a lot of depth, I would definitely recommend this. And if you prefer more impactful shimmers, I would probably go with the warm palette. But for me personally, my preferences and what I love in a palette, which is just something neutral, easy to wear, never too much, but always very beautiful, the I Need a Nude is just the go-to for me. So if I had to choose, I pick the nude palette. That is it for me today. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. Did any of these choices surprise you? Let me know. I love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!